Welcome to Banking on Data 2.0, which is brought to you by BQ Prime and powered by Oracle. The Indian financial services industry overcame never seen before disruption during the pandemic, and they did that by leveraging digital. As India emerges into a new normal and gears up to take on the mantle of the world's fastest growing economy, how do BFSI organizations in India build more agile, scalable, and secure technology infrastructure that can help them profit from new opportunities, navigate a complex new business landscape, and effectively manage new levels of threats? Cloud is clearly the answer, the platform of choice. But given the digital-first business landscape, cloud also has to evolve to meet new business requirements, and at the same time, there has to be a reduction in cloud complexity. To help us decode the latest trends in cloud in the BFSI space and how BFSI organizations can better leverage cloud in the new normal, we have brought together two eminent technology experts. First up, we have Mr. Mahesh Ramamoorthy, Chief Information Officer at one of India's leading banks, Yes Banks, who brings tremendous experience in BFSI to his role, where he leads technology and digital transformation at the bank. Welcome, Mr. Ramamoorthy.
Thank you.
We're also privileged to have Kapil Makhija, Vice President Technology Cloud at Oracle India. Welcome to this conversation, Kapil.
Thank you, Ever.
So even as I begin, right, I want to tackle really the elephant in the room, which is really digital first, which has become very, very important in the pandemic. And Mr. Ramamoorthy, I wanted to ask you, how is a digital first business strategy that puts data at the center of all business decisions and customer interactions drive this need for next generation clouds? And how does this technology scenario of next generation cloud look like in the BFSI space?
Well, thanks, I would really appreciate it. I think it's a fairly, I would say, important question in the context of where technology is evolving. If you look at the ecosystem now, a lot of the engagements or interactions that business really are veering towards are about saying, how can we do a fairly frictionless engagement with the client? Less friction is what is better. And also tailor these for very specific age groups, very specific segments of customers across various business lines. Now, this obviously has its own set of capabilities that require not just from what we do from a traditional hardware infrastructure perspective and networks, but also in terms of the agility that is required to create fairly nimble capabilities on the front end channels. And this essentially not just about channels, it also means that we are able to, I would say, package the right product at the right time to the customers or prospects, as I would call it. So this demands three things, which is very imperative. One, with the vast amount of data that any bank, any interactions, or any large payment processors today collect, it is important that we have a very scalable, agile, I would say, data model and environment, which essentially gives the organization the flexibility to be able to create on the fly, I would say, opportunities to cross-sell, upsell, and at the same time, we manage the risk that is arising from such interactions. So channels could be any, it could be internet, it could be mobile. But what's very, very important now is the ability for us to have the right platform, the right set of competencies to analyze the platform, and the right usage of AI and ML on top of it to do it. So the digital first approach that you really called out essentially becomes I would say, the key enabler that we design with the customer at the center of it. And for the customer's benefit, to drive it is about making sure that data is in the right spaces, which means if you say that any interaction generates data, but being able to analyze the data to make it much more knowledgeable and create intelligence on top of it is where the data warehouse layer comes. What it really then puts it, when you put it on a cloud, the scalability, the ability for you to expand on demand and more importantly, with the next gen technologies that really gives you automatic, I would say, DR hyper capabilities and everything. I think this is where organizations have started their journeys. I think there is fair bit of work as yet to be done, but that's where I would say every institution who really engages with the customer have started to move their journey. Digital first is the theme. Uh, Data is the enabler, but cloud essentially is going to be the center of driving all of this change for any organizations, and more specifically, the banking financial institutions.
Well, that's so well put. Digital first is really the theme, and data is the enabler, and cloud is really the platform that drives it. Kapil, your comments on this?
Yeah, in fact, Mahesh really summed up pretty well, and all his thoughts behind what he just mentioned brings out all the experience he has in this uh, banking sector. Almost like a dozen banks where he has worked before. I think that comes in the knowledge which we shared with us. So I fully agree with what Mahesh mentioned about it, and with our presence across the globe. Because of the our presence in the database space across the globe, in fact, we are actually part of almost every Fortune 500 company. Almost every bank across the globe and in India leverages Oracle technologies. And because of that, we have seen that data really plays a very important role in any organization, and specifically in banking as such. Because a lot of customer experience is getting driven from the data which is resides within the organization, within the bank. There are various tedious processes which are getting streamlined if we leverage this data pretty well. There are a lot of disparate system within the organization. If this can be connected properly, I think we can get some really good insight from the data. So that's really important for all of us out here. The data is actually a new fuel. It actually differentiates in any bank, any organization. So I think better availability, reliability, analytics plays a very important role in this. So any organization for that matter, when they analyze the data and they decipher some patterns from that, in if we identify some anomalies, it's easier for us to predict any anomaly, and the cyber attacks and the threats specifically in the banking environment actually can be safeguarded because of all of that. So we are really seeing a lot of trends in banking sector as well. And if we talk about the generation 2 cloud has been there existing since almost like 10 years now in this industry. A lot of banks have still not moved to cloud, and in fact, Mahesh just rightly mentioned about it that there's a lot which needs to be done out here. Uh, so there is a generation 2 cloud requirement which is there, which means like the core systems, the core financial systems have not yet been moved to cloud. But obviously, there is a very big need for that. Only few workloads, surrounding workloads, have moved to cloud. The important part is the performance and security, which are really important for that. And banks today actually need financially backed SLA. They just don't want any player to dump the hardware, software, network, and leave it on bank to run the show of their own. They want the hyperscaler skin also in the game on day-to-day basis, on hourly basis. So that's really important. I think another important aspect is that workloads also varies. Their requirements also varies. Some workloads can definitely move to public cloud. Some actually some workloads have the requirement of regulatory regulations which are existing in the country, and data cannot go outside the data center in many cases because of the regulatory requirement. For that, there is actually a need of a separate deployment choice wherein this cloud can be deployed within bank's premises, within bank's firewall, and then it has the flexibility of cloud as well. So all that actually plays a very important role as we move forward and banks adopt the cloud journey in India as well.
I think you also explained very well, Kapil, in terms of how Generation 2 cloud is very different from first generation cloud, and that's really so interesting how far cloud has come. Mahesh, since you spoke about digital first, and clearly what this means is that all business processes are now driven by that; they are accelerated. So, how do BFSI CIOs like you successfully anticipate some of these accelerated business processes from a BFSI context? And also, what this means is that results need to be visible quicker. Also, the business value needs of cloud solutions need to be clearer. So how do you do that? And what's your advice to other CIOs too who are watching?
Areas that I think I've again is goes back to the fact that any organization, as it revisits its business strategy first, uh, there are very clear directions that emerge, and that has to be very clearly understood by the CIOs. A couple of key areas that is emerging as a trend and clearly is how do you enable your partner ecosystem to become a far more agile, I would say, interactions to onboard clients and to service clients, right? Partner ecosystem, which means the outreach, whether you tie up with fintechs or NBFCs or other who has more reach and able to get more customers onboarded or to sell your products. What does this mean? This means that back-ended, any organization has to revisit its technology architecture to drive a much more interactive capabilities through a very structured program around API engagements, microservices, and an enterprise service bus, which essentially allows you to manage interactions much more seamlessly and not waste too much time in onboarding such opportunities. But in doing all of this, what really starts to drive the technology architecture and to enable this interaction is all about how do you create those new headless architecture for an API and everything to be able to enable it on the cloud native platforms. In the past, 5 years back, all APIs were built, structured, enabled within the organization's perimeter. But now that extension has started to develop. Today, a lot of such new age capabilities which are available on the cloud allow you to create and expand on demand. I think that's most important under a secure framework. The security obviously plays a very important. But as you start to interact more and more with partners, more and more outreach in terms of corporates or everyone starting to use, I would say, API-led interactions, the digital first theme is much more well managed if you do it on a scalable load factor, and that's where cloud plays a very important aspect. So to I think to really call this out, I would say that any CIO would need to step back a bit, understand what the business strategy for growth is, which are the key areas, verticals that are really wanting that, I would say, expansion. And when you do on-demand expansion, which also includes how you interact with customers and everything, make sure those workloads, as Kapil was alluding to, make sure those workloads are effectively either rebuilt for cloud or directly built on cloud, and effectively then manage your security framework and allow for faster dynamic onboarding and servicing. I think that's where we have to look at it. A lot of the banks have attempted it. Some have been successful. Some are still on the journey. And I would say that trying to create all this infrastructure within a bank's environment, I think is just going to start self-defeating itself, because uh, all the numbers are going to be going through the roof very soon. Now, up till now, we have corporates engaged, but eventually, I would see even a retail, I would say an individual customer starting to use some of the APIs much more intellectually. I would see that happening in the next couple of years through various other fintechs and other service organizations. So I think that's very important. We have to keep that in consideration and plan all of your enablers, technology enablers through the cloud native capabilities that are coming in, whether it's in the Oracle world or whether the AWS Azure world, and leverage the kind of capabilities that are available and scale on that. That's obviously one of the key things. And any organization, once it does this, it has to keep in mind the secure aspect, being compliant, and making sure that you have the right data protections in place as you engage and embark on this journey.
I think I agree with Mahesh. Ivor, in fact, many banks we are seeing trying to leverage cloud, and they have different outcomes expectation from that. Some are trying to improve efficiency, some are trying to provide better customer experience, some are actually trying to leverage operational efficiency and the cost reduction as well. Because most of the time we have seen that infrastructure, be it software or hardware, the on-premise infrastructure is actually designed for the peak, which comes generally over the quarter end or over the year end, but which is actually underutilized maybe 250 plus days in the year. It's always important how we can leverage some of these efficiencies and make it more useful. So, a question, Mahesh, to you, since Yes Bank is one of the leading growing bank in the country today, just want to understand as a CIO, how are you planning to leverage cloud to enable business specific to Yes Bank? We have been talking about BFSI as an industry, banks as an vertical, but specific to Yes Bank, since the time you have taken charge in last year's time, in fact, we have seen a lot of action happening in Yes Bank. A lot of transformation projects are being undertaken. So, just want to understand your perspective specific to Yes Bank. Like, how are you trying to leverage cloud to support business and enable business?
Kapil, thanks. I think it's an interesting journey of the last year, but more importantly, as a bank, we've shifted gears to get more retail, to create more outreach. Now, this obviously, what we've really come back to the table in terms of our overall technology strategy in itself. And what we've essentially done is we've sort of laned our entire action plan for cloud enablement across multiple areas. First and foremost, we essentially started our journey by moving workloads which are non-critical, and which means even applications which are essentially non-critical to business. We started moving it. We obviously created a tenanted model to start with, so that at least we know the game plan, we know what to learn from it, and to also be under the compliance framework, regulatory and compliance framework. Next in line, we are really looking to move very soon some of our production applications, which are essentially critical applications. Now, that's the next big piece that we're really starting to work. That journey is going to be very critical because it will obviously need to be fairly well orchestrated from a security as well as from a compliance perspective. So that is the next big thing. So we've already identified about 8 or 9 key applications and workloads which will start moving there. This includes our robotic process automations, which also includes some of our channels, which is important, and one amongst them being the API channel. The other is also in terms of mobile channels, which essentially is a big area that we've really started the journey. So that is something which we're looking at. The third most important is about data. We've been fairly using in-house capabilities, on-prem capabilities from a cloud movement for data cloud, on-prem database for cloud. But now we are now saying that let's go to cloud. Let's understand what kind of data we can shift to cloud, especially the data warehousing as we move from a data lake into the data warehousing model. And that's very active conversations at this moment in time. And that's the third take that we really lane that we are working towards. So eventually, I would say that over the next, I would say 3 years, I would expect minus the core banking infrastructure, pretty much a lot of the front-ending channels, the data and the analytics, as well as some of the business MIS related workloads would actually be on the cloud. Obviously, this drives certain competencies to be created, certain partner interlocks to be created, and in terms of some of the KPIs that need to be put in place to measure the efficiency and the effectiveness. So that's I think a 4-part approach that we really now starting. Some have already started, some are work in progress, and you can also see the look ahead view that we're working towards, Kapil.
Thanks, Mahesh. In fact, thanks for sharing this insight. And we are seeing that trend across banking because we have been engaging with all banks across the country, be it the largest public sector banks out there in West or in Mumbai, or for that matter, maybe the private sector banks out here. We are seeing the same trend of adoption of cloud within banks as well. Maybe some openness by the regulators out here to that cloud is also helping and the value add what banks have been seeing across is also maybe the reason behind it, because the number of projects I've seen moving to cloud in last 8 months, if I talk about this calendar year from January to maybe August now, it's actually more than maybe last 3 years the number of projects we have seen. So that's the transformation we are seeing in this industry across banking. Thank you very much, Mahesh, for sharing that insight.
So, Kapil, can you tell us about, when you say banks are gaining from these next generation clouds, can you elaborate a little bit more on that and tell us a little bit more about, how some of your investments in cloud solutions are seeing results in BFSI?
Today, if I talk about any corporate enterprise across the country, they leverage Oracle technology solutions, products for their core system, for their mission critical environments, business critical applications which they run. All of this support can be leveraged, and customers can actually move to cloud, reducing these support rewards which we provide. Some of these customers like National Stock Exchange, which pay almost like a huge amount to us in crores, that support cost, they have reduced this support cost to almost nil when they have migrated to cloud extensively.
Thank you, Kapil. Mahesh, you articulated your cloud vision really well, and especially the part where you said that ultimately customers themselves use APIs, right? But is really fascinating as to where that will go. Now, as one of India's fastest growing bank, what are your expectations from a cloud service provider? Kapil just explained to us, all that Oracle is doing, but what are your expectations as a CIO from cloud service providers, and where again we all know that Oracle is one of the leading ones.
So I think the way I look at it is there is four areas that I would really expect any cloud provider to really help us out in the journeys. One is being a partner, and partner does not mean just helping us in terms of deploying our capabilities onto the cloud, but in terms of enabling the whole transformation to the cloud. That journey is most important, and not just about change, enabling the change to the cloud, but about sustenance in the cloud. That's most important for a financial institution like us. I think that's the first part. The second is cloud for any bank from a technology perspective uh, continuously exposes risk, and to be able to manage the risk, any of the cloud service provider or cloud partners that I would call it would need to help us proactively say, you know what, now the maturity of managing risk on a cloud has to be far more better, and these are the 10 things that we continuously engage with. It is risk as a service, not just hosting as a service, but risk as a service need to be a combined view there. That enables bank technology teams to really focus on how the what part of the story, not the how part of the story. So risk is essentially managed better. The third part is essentially, and Kapil did allude to it earlier, is about the whole game plan of what do I take into the cloud. And I know there is a lot of work that each of the cloud partners do, and Oracle in particular, because we've been having fairly engaged conversations. So what do I really bring, and what's the plan to take it in? I think that's very important. Migrating it across to the cloud, it's not a lift and shift. It is about re-architecting quite a lot, quite a lot, not just from a technology perspective. Operating perspective is big, and the risk management. So there is far more involved decisions that need to be taken. So it is very important. That's the third area. And last but not the least, right now, a lot of the cloud partners still don't have interconnect, which are far more stable. I would say interconnectivity, which really allows you to give you the flexibility across partners in terms of the operating environments, in terms of the DR strategies and everything. It is exists. I don't say no, but it is pretty weak. I think that maturity has to be far more evolved. And once that happens, I don't see why banks, especially financial institutions, really start to invest in their own data center and keep sustaining. They would rather do demand pay as you use kind of a model, and essentially say, you know what, I would rather focus on building capabilities that drive business growth than manage sustenance. I think that's where. So cloud, I would only, these four asks is my broad level asks in terms of any of my cloud partners. And I'm sure a lot of this would be common across all of my, I would say, colleagues across the industry.
I agree, Mahesh. I think the onus is on industry actually, on all of us out here to instill more confidence in our banking customers actually. And if banks can move to cloud, then I think everything else fall in line. It's very much like those 80% workloads which are still mission critical, residing on premise. If this can move, then the entire other workloads are also equally easy to move actually. So that's the key. Just want to understand, Mahesh, you have been part of the leadership meetings at Yes Bank and the board meeting as well. So, what are the conversations out there? In fact, how are they expecting IT to sort of play an important role in the growth journey? Anything specifically you may just want to highlight, which is going to be important for the industry players like us?
I think now there is definitely the realization that anything they do, whether it is customer acquisition to customer service to management of risk to management of business data points from an MIS perspective or providing data to the regulator, anything you do is tech enabled, full stop. I think that's the biggest first acceptance that has come at a board level. And hence, today, technology being at the center of all that they deliver or manage, there is fair bit of appreciation that comes in from the board to say, you know what, yeah, what's your tech strategy? So the constant conversation is, how does your tech strategy really evolve or is evolving to help us drive growth, to manage risk? So while it makes our job easier, it also puts that much more pressure on the technology team to say, you driving more risk into my business. So how do you really manage the risk while you enable growth? So it's a double-edged kind of interesting conversation that happens, and they are looking for concrete answers and say, who are your partners? How does your partner come in to help you support this whole transition and transformation? And how do you benchmark yourself? More importantly, what are some of the industry benchmarks that you try to maturity levels? And last but not the least, how do you run your whole KPIs and key performance in the KPIs that you really work through? So I would say that couple brief answer to what you asked for is the appreciation exists. It drives a lot more, I would say, respond a responsibility back on the tech team to be able to be more aligned to business and understand what to in terms of what is the best decision. So tech has now become a part of the decision process rather than the past. Some decision is taken and then it is then thrown over to the tech to execute. So I think that's the biggest shift, tech being a part of the strategy rather than being on the fence. I think that to me, that shift is now what enables us to drive the organization itself onto its growth path.
I agree, Mahesh, and that's what we have been hearing from other banking customers as well, that CIOs, CTOs are actually having much more responsibility and accountability in the business. They are part of most of the board meeting, all decision making. They have been part of all that. So which is really put a lot of onus, and definitely importance of IT has gone many notches up in every organization where we interact.
So finally, we're running out of time. So, and this has been a wonderful conversation, but I just wanted to deal with this issue of cloud complexity too, which is very important as we move to next generation clouds. One of the dangers is the increasing cloud complexity. And Mahesh, you alluded to that when you said that cloud players need to perhaps communicate with each other, cloud platforms. So, from your perspective, Mahesh, as cloud complexity grows, how can BFSI CIOs really make their cloud journeys easier and simpler? And perhaps, Kapil, you can add to it after Mahesh.
So I think the way I look at it is, so I just take a step back. I think uh, any of the CIOs and need to now choose their partners first in terms of who are going to be not just vendors but partners. That's a big difference in that. The second part is understand from their own tech and business strategy to say what should they be now looking at. So which means that what should go where, and which is the best technology and adoption that really need to look at, and how do these two partners make them probably part of your own execution of the strategy. I think that's most important. But then when two or three partners that you choose become a part, cloud partners become a part of your own execution strategy, now you do two things. One, you make them accountable, equally accountable to drive the success. That's most important. You make them accountable as an extension to your organization from your availability and security perspective. And last but not the least, as you start to expose more and more with identified partners, cloud partners, the scalability demands, as well as in terms of the ability for them to look at it horizontally across the industry and not just myopic within a particular institution, expands, that opportunity comes through. So to me, I think I would say the complexity is better managed when you make cloud partners an integral part of your strategy, not in sitting outside, but being a part of your whole execution strategy. I think that's when you can probably leverage their skills better, rather than you trying to define it. It's a co-created model, and I believe that's going to drive better value.
Yeah, I also agree with what Mahesh just echoed. In fact, we have to play more role of a partner than just a vendor out there. And when we work with customers like Yes Bank and some of the other banks across the country, we believe in doing complete hand holding. In fact, our success in some of this engagement is tied to our customer success because it's like completely a consumption based model in Oracle today. The team on the ground, they don't get any credit for booking the order. Is more of a consumption. Once the customer starts consuming, that's the time when they get credit and recognition within the organization. So there is a change in the trend what we have seen over a period of time. And Mahesh even talked about the security aspect, and we at Oracle actually take a much larger responsibility in this shared uh, responsibility, shared security mechanism which is there. So since we are having data centers across the globe, it's our responsibility to ensure that we cover the best of the best practices across security across all data centers, because we know fully understand the need of generation to customers out here, because this cloud what we have designed out here is mainly for mission critical environments. So the best of the security, best of the performance, and the SLAs, which are really key, as Mahesh mentioned about it, that the skin has to be in the game for the partner as well. So that's really key. Working with the ISVs, building the ecosystem to provide the complete support, multi-cloud ecosystem which has to be there. For example, many banks out here in country, they're Oracle customers as well as VMware customers, and they want to move some of these VMware workloads to cloud. They want to extend that environment. They want to have the DR on cloud running production on DC itself. Want to have three-way DR. All of that can be done with one cloud service provider who can actually tie up with VMware, with Microsoft, with ServiceNow to provide SLA-based services to customers. So that's the trend we have seen to ease out the complexity which exists in the environment today. It becomes extremely difficult for any bank, for that matter, to have five, six players in the data center, the server, storage, network, operating system, virtualization layer, and much more beyond this. And every company comes up with a version, patch, update, upgrade every 90 days. And all of this has to integrate, work together. And I know Mahesh team spends sleepless nights, many weekends just to pull this up, put this upgrade patches together just to ensure everything is working fine and there is no human intervention or human error involved. So all that becomes sometimes quite tedious, quite complex, and that's where we are trying to play some role wherein some of these autonomous services take care of all of it with all the artificial intelligence, machine learning capabilities, algorithms which are already built to manage and simplify IT and sort of make banking much easier and better, so that banks like Yes Bank can provide much better customer experience out there in the market.
Well, gentlemen, it's been a fascinating discussion. I completely agree with you, Kapil. I can fully understand the importance, the criticality of the role that Mahesh and his team play. In fact, a personal experience just yesterday, a new bank that I banked with, their virtual debit card infrastructure went down. And I can understand just how mission critical it is, right? Because typically with banks like Yes Bank, we never face such issues. So, just to sum up, I think we really looked at some of the drivers over here for banks in this digital first age. And as Mahesh so well put it, digital first is the theme, data is the enabler, and cloud is the platform. We really looked at the use cases of what's happening, how we looked at Yes Bank's cloud roadmap as it well. It's really fascinating, especially Mahesh, what you said about APIs, etc. And again, Kapil, when you describe the investments that Oracle has put in, the commitment that Oracle has towards the customers, and ultimately how this is tech is thanks to cloud, thanks to some of these technologies, how tech has become part of the business decision process itself, and how, as Mahesh said, vendors, they're not looking at vendors, but they're looking at partners when it comes to cloud. There's been a lot here today from the perspective of the next generation of cloud and how BFSI organizations are using it. I'm sure it'll be very, very valuable to our audiences. So thank you once again, Mahesh. Thank you, Kapil, for being part of this Banking on Data 2.0 series, which is powered by Oracle. It's been a real pleasure to have you with us.